the ACT, it's mostly used in the South and the Midwest, or the SAT, which is in the East and the West. Percentage-wise, it's about 50-50 use. Low score, if someone has a low score, apply to universities where such scores are optional. Some universities, they don't require them. They ask you to submit them as an option. SAT subject tests are important to some schools also. If you don't know the difference between the ACT and the SAT, I thought I put some items that differentiate them. ACT is count-based, where the SAT is reasoning ability test. More emphasis for ACT on higher math, but for the SAT is more emphasis on vocabulary. For ACT is longer questions versus tricky questions. No penalty for wrong answers versus penalty for wrong answers. A greater choice of score, fewer options. So you can see the difference. Some people, they don't do well in SAT, they do much better in ACT and vice versa. So know yourself and see which score or which test suits you better. Admission for postgraduates, it depends on the program specifics, the work experience, especially in the business field, your test scores, your GPAs, your interviews again, your recommendations and statement of purpose. Your statement of purpose is very important at the graduate level to see whether really there is a good fit between what you are looking for and the program itself. A lot of universities, including mine at George Washington University, if it is a bad fit, we tell you you should go somewhere else. We can give you some advice to go to where you should belong or something. Some people, they don't know exactly what they are looking for. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. George, for your nice presentation and concise, and you helped us in the timing because we started a bit late. So our third speaker today is Dr. Irina Bird, and she's an assistant professor of gynecology and obstetrics and neurology. She's the director of research at maternal fetal medicine, member of the pathobiology graduate program, and she's from Johns Hopkins. Please welcome Irina.
Assalamu alaikum. I was asked today to speak in regards to three objectives for this workshop. How do we encourage creation and application of new methods of learning? How do we evaluate student learning experiences in both master's and PhD degrees? And what are the common difficulties in learning during undergraduate and postgraduate education? So I'm going to start with a case study number one. I am from Johns Hopkins University, so I'm going to be speaking about the programs that I have firsthand knowledge. So School of Medicine has a graduate program of cellular and molecular medicine. This program accepts candidates after their bachelor's degree in biology, biochemistry, genetics, molecular sciences, as well as a combined MD, PhD program students. Those that graduated already and have some kind of a bachelor's degree are in medical school and getting their combined MD, PhD degree. There are some instances that, and we could discuss that, when students are not able to complete the PhD degree following their bachelor's degree. Those students may receive master's degree, and that's what I'm going to be talking about as well. So this gives you an overview of first-year curriculum of graduate school, first year of a PhD program in cellular and molecular medicine. Now, as Dr. Rao mentioned, this is a more focused area, but the subjects are taught in more vague fashion and require some more learning on behalf of students. So this is a curriculum, and as you can see here, Introduction to Human Body, topics in cellular and molecular medicine, molecular biology and genomics, genetics, pathways and regulation, cell structure and dynamics, core discussions, cellular and molecular basis of disease, and research. Research requires 3 10-week rotations. Now, unlike the bachelor's degree, the undergraduate degree, where you have a whole list of courses that you could choose from and the core requirements that you have to take over 4 years, and then you have a choice how to compile these classes together to fill the 4 years of your education. In graduate school, these classes are taken together with other students in your program. So you have a very regimented curriculum, and you study together, and you help each other. What is a kicker here is that there is a minimum grade that is required. For our program, minimum grade is B. So if a student is not achieving a minimum grade of B in the graduate program in a class, asked to retake the class, guess what happens if they don't achieve a B next time? Bye-bye. Thanks for coming. So this is very important, and we'll discuss what are the learning difficulties and how we get around them. So this is very important and different from undergraduate degree, where, you know, students are known to receive grades of C, C+, D. This is a different level of education. And at this time, we really have to make sure that we are graduating professionals that are competent. What are the research rotations? So because I'm giving you an example of a biology program, and the one that requires, you know, somebody to go on to develop skills as a person who is creating experiments, publishing, etc., these students are required to conduct research at least in 3 different laboratories during the first year of training. And so then they select the area within those laboratories that they are interested in. And after completing these 3 different projects, they're selecting a laboratory in which they will continue doing research for the duration of the PhD. And each student is assigned a rotation advisor who will assist that student through the rotation selection process. The main purpose of those laboratory rotations is to assure that students have exposure to a variety of research topics, techniques, approaches, leading ultimately to selection of the thesis mentor and laboratory. Now, here's a commonality for all PhD programs. In majority of PhD programs, I would say 99%, a student is required to come up with a thesis project where they will present at the end of the thesis, their thesis, and they will defend it. Second year curriculum, and usually PhD degrees have 2 years of curriculum, the studies, really not a full second year. And then you go on to work in the laboratories or in your field of study and working on your thesis. So this is an example. At the end of the second year, you're required to do an oral examination, okay? That's when professors could ask you about the studies over a course of 1.5 years. Everything that was taught is asked in a fashion in front of a committee. So how is oral examination administered? It's administered by graduate board of the university. All programs go through that board, whether biology, whether it's architecture, whether it's, you know, different programs. This examination evaluates the depth and breadth of student activities during those 1.5 to 2 years. Usually program supplies 5 faculty, and applicant or program student selects 3 possible committee members. And ultimately then, between a student and the program, 3 are selected from program and 2 from the candidate. And so that's the committee for the oral exam. Then, once the oral exam is completed, the student has successfully passed their oral exam, they go on to select their committee for thesis. So this is a very complicated process. I'm just giving you a roadmap for what's there awaiting you. This committee meets then with a candidate on a yearly basis. And for second year students who are usually just beginning their research, this meeting should involve primarily detailed discussion of their proposed thesis And this committee decides when it's time for a student to graduate ultimately and defend. So what is a thesis proposal? Students present to the committee prior to their meeting a written form of proposal for their thesis work. Now, in some bachelor programs, this is a similar process. When you're enrolled in undergraduate degrees in most of the Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, all the schools that are Eastern Coast that are Ivy League and top schools, such as Johns Hopkins, you are required to graduate from undergraduate degree with a similar thesis proposal. And that has a format of National Institute of Health proposal application. And ultimately, a copy is kept forever in the program office. So students in the third and subsequent year, the meetings with the thesis committee requires discussion of both what's the progress and what's in the future, and then committee decides when to graduate. So what's the dissertation? Once the committee has decided that it's time for one to go on to defend their thesis, student presents the thesis, and it's expected that the thesis will lead to a publication. Usually, though, I have to tell you, at Johns Hopkins, 2 or 3 publications come out from any student that's in graduate program. It is actually expected that people applying for a graduate degree have already some kind of form of involvement during undergraduate years. So it's so important on an undergraduate level to get involved in research and to be proactive in where you're going next in your life. So what about novel methods of learning? What do we have for novel methods of learning? This is case study number 2, graduate program in pathobiology. This is an example. So because these programs don't require medical knowledge and they're in School of Medicine, what School of Medicine did for these programs, they implemented translational research rotation. So if you had your undergraduate degree, let's say in biology, and you are in the field of pathobiology, which deals with majority of diseases, and so they have implemented one course that runs over several years, and you could take several rotations in it, where you go to pathology lab and you basically practice together with surgical pathologists, diagnosis of all the specimens that go through and looking at patients' history. So these translational and sort of workshop-like methods help students to understand diseases in the context in which they will be working in the future and designing experiments. So what are the evaluation checkpoints? First of all, the classes. As I mentioned, B+ average is required. Oral examination, thesis proposal, doctoral dissertation. What is most important, and here's, I have a speech for you. What is important and what we have noticed that is not coming through from a lot of students from Saudi are important letters of recommendation. Life is just beginning, and it's important to receive a great letter of recommendation while you're an undergraduate student or you're a graduate student. There's a special format for these letters of recommendation, and that's expected when we look at the application on the graduate level and the graduate level. What is the format usually of a letter of recommendation? What we have seen for applicants from Saudi Arabia is very standard one-page letters that basically fill in the student's name and have the same standard form. Did well on this, great in ethics, great in this, great in that. The format for United States letters of recommendation and sort of is a well-known, and I'll try to explain to you, and we're trying to do now workshops to educate also our professors here, collaborators here, how to write the letters in a format that's understood by United States system. So the first paragraph in the letter usually is a strong opening paragraph. What an excellent match a candidate has for this position. And at the end of graduate school, I mean, you're going to postdoctorate studies and you're going for job applications, you really need those letters of recommendations. So you ask those letters of recommendation from people that you've developed the closest relationship. They need to explain in the second paragraph how long they have known you and in what capacity, okay? There are following paragraphs about your skills, leadership skills. Were you an administrative chief resident if you're in medicine? Were you president of a club if you're undergraduate or graduate school? And what is your initiative skills? Did you start any programs or courses while you're there? Did you tutor? Did you have interest in education and teaching? Are you adaptive in new skills? Are you first to lead something? Are you a great leader? Are you great at planning? Those are important things that need to go into the letter. And guess what? They need to use also examples. They just can't say, oh, he's a great planner. When they make a statement like this and I'm evaluating the letter, I want to know exactly what they planned. Give an example. So these are very important parts of the letter that are going on. It has to have a very strong closing paragraph. So, for example, he or she is poised to make substantial contribution towards understanding of how, blah, blah, and I have to say something, strong about the person again. There are different formats for different letters. There's a dean's letter format, there's a chairman's letter format, and there's a mentor's letter format. For example, a mentor is a person who's known you for a long time. During undergraduate degree, it's your mentor for thesis or your advisor. They should know you really, really well. So get to know them well so they could write you a 2-page letter stating several examples of your excellent work and telling how great you are and basically advertising you and telling the world how great you are. 1-page letters are usually written by chairman. It's understood that chairman cannot write you a 2-page letter, and we just need to, from chairman, to say, this is a great candidate, graduated from this institution. I've known candidate because they rotated through my department, and everybody has great things to say. The letter, there's different nuances when the letter says, with no reservation, as opposed to, I give my highest recommendation. Those nuances actually mean a lot in American language. Also, ask them, when you're asking for letters of recommendation, make sure you ask the letter givers to say that they will give you a great letter of recommendation. What sometimes happens is that they agree to write you a letter of recommendation, but write you a bad letter of recommendation. So that's great in a system where you could see the letter and not send it. But what's basically a custom in the United States is to waive the right to see the letter. And you're expected to waive the right to see the letter. So how would you know if you're waiving voluntarily to see the letter and they're not sending it to you undercover in a separate email because they want you to see how great the letter is? So if you waive the letter, to see the letter, you ethically have no right to ask for the letter. And if they wrote you a bad letter, you would never know, and then people will not invite you for interviews, and people will not give you a chance to enter a program. So we, as providers of letters, need to learn how to say no, and you, as people asking for letters, could say one sentence, would you be able to give me a great letter of recommendation? And for them to agree. So just a letter of recommendation does not do when you're waiving a right to see it. So what are common learning difficulties during undergraduate and postgraduate education? Not understanding concepts. And it's an easy solution. Universities have tutoring available for those who cannot understand concepts. Not doing well on multiple choice questions. It depends how you were brought up. If the system that you come from has multiple choice questions or doesn't have multiple choice questions, again, those tricks can be learned through tutoring. And tutoring usually is available. If it's not, you could always look up online. There are always upper years giving some levels of tutoring. And then ultimately, students sometimes fail to invest time in learning. Everything is time. If you want yourself to do well, you need to put in time. And what's harder issue to address, how can you put in time if you're not interested? Are you not interested in subject? Maybe that subject is not for you. Or you're not interested by teacher and instructor. They're not inspiring you to learn. Okay, and that's how we fail. We fail sometimes at not being inspirational help. So sometimes we need to inspire people to learn by mnemonics. So I'm going to give you, I'm a physician, and I learn a lot through mnemonics. You know, so much information must be learned during medical school. And this is simple mnemonic for appendicitis, or differential for right lower quadrant pain. And it's in the word appendicitis itself. And you could see that each letter stands for different kind of diagnosis on the differential diagnosis list. Okay? Mnemonics exist for everything, for biology, for biochemistry. They're all available online. And so, you know, that sometimes decreases invested time in learning because you could simply memorize different ways of mnemonics. This is biochemistry mnemonics, memorizing amino acids. Okay? For example, each letter in the sentence that is at the top, any help in learning these little molecules proves truly valuable, stands for one amino acid. And so that gives you a clue how to remember the names of amino acids. I mean, these are 20 amino acids. Try learning them right away. You need some kind of cues. And those are mnemonics that exist in architecture, in engineering, in everything, okay? So those are the things that I wanted to share with you, and I hope that you guys succeed in where you're going and have great successes to tell other people.
All right. Thank you very much for this valuable speech, and I think the beauty of the three speeches that they're different and they complement each other, so giving the idea from one side to the other. So now we're open for questions, and if you raise your hand, we can find the questions. So any questions from up there, the female side? The microphone is there, or if there are questions from the male side here. If I start from the valuable speakers, if I want from you to give one single advice at the end to these students who are willing to go to the United States to complete their studies, so to summarize, just one single advice from each one of you to our students. So can we start with Dr. Suhail?
Actually, it's a very easy one. Work hard. I have no other advice for you. This is going for your postgraduate studies to United States is a serious commitment, and that could only be accomplished if you work hard and you are committed to going through the process, which is going to be very tedious.
Okay. George?
In addition to that, I would like to tell you to not copy and paste. In the business school especially, this is plagiarism at least, and I'm sure in other fields, and it's cultural. In some cultures, if they copy and paste, it's acceptable, but not in America. This is a serious problem.
Okay, Reina?
And I would like to add also, find yourself a great mentor. When you get to United States, find somebody that you think are going to be supporting you through your career, and they could stay your long-time mentor. That shouldn't be the first person you meet, but somebody you could bond and they understand you and you understand them, and you could share something from your studies to your family issues, ask them for advice. This is very, very important for a career.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions? Okay.
Okay, so it seems like everybody is still shy to ask questions, so I will start and take the lead. My question is to Dr. Irina Bird. How crucial is it, to your opinion, for medical students early in their medical education to get involved into research activity? especially talking about basic science research versus clinical research? Thank you.
For medical students specifically?
For medical students or for those who are seeking higher education but early in their medical education?
Oh, I think it's very important. What we found in our institution, if students come for a year of research, it serves also for them like a year of culturalization, a year of learning how to conduct evidence-based medicine, a year of learning how research is done, well, Johns Hopkins in my specific case, and have an opportunity to attend really great lecture series, and it inspires a lot of students, opens their eyes into what is out there and how they could make their life better and of Saudi Arabia life better when they come back. So once they get into residencies and fellowships, we hope that we could get that spark into them, that they will come and do research coming back, but it also gives them letters of recommendation and certainly the opportunities for joining better residencies.
Okay, may I add that, as Dr. Bird said, I think you don't have to wait till you come to the United States to start your research. There are many research opportunities that are available in Saudi Arabia at the present time. Research actually is one of those activities that differentiates you from the rest of the students. It creates a different class of individual, and I strongly recommend not to wait till you come to the United States. Get engaged in research in Saudi Arabia, provide a differentiating factor even before you come to the American soil, and that's going to be a great help to you.
Just want to make a comment, if I may. Faiz Bora from New York. So I wear two hats. I'm a program director for surgery, and I'm also director of research, and just want to highlight the comments made by our speakers. I think it is absolutely critical to work hard, and I think it is perhaps the most important thing to find yourself a mentor and a lifelong learning mentor. It is also critical to be involved in research as soon as you can. It helps you understand the science of medicine, and it provides you with a skill set and a language that's going to stay with you throughout. And as an applicant, particularly as an applicant who's looking at a competitive specialty like surgery, it is what really differentiates you from the other candidates. So absolutely critical to get involved as soon as possible here in Saudi Arabia, and then hopefully continue that in the US if you have an opportunity.
Excellent, thank you very much. Pat, do you have something to add? Yeah. So. Okay, go ahead.
In relation to the barrier for education for undergraduate and postgraduate studies, I need to ask about the tutorial method in teaching, why it's one of the barriers.
Can you assign whom you are asking of the panel?
I need to ask about the barrier for education in relation to tutorial method in teaching. Why the tutorial method is one of the most barrier in education? What is the difference in tutorial in undergraduate and postgraduate?
The
Is
tutorial,
the question what about criteria for postgraduate?
Yes, in tutorial.
Criteria for admission?
Maybe in the criteria for admission or during the study or during an exam and so on.
So the undergraduate education happens after one graduates from high school, and the postgraduate is after that bachelor's degree. So for PhD, that's a lifelong sort of learning to become a professional. So the criteria after high school are just to sum up, and maybe George could sum up with the criteria for undergraduate school, and then I'll sum up for the graduate school.
Well, for undergraduate, you have to have your grades, of course, from high school. Usually they ask you for a letter of recommendation from your counselor, from your teachers. They look at your courses, if you are taking AP courses or what kind of courses you are taking. They will look at your TOEFL if you are international students or IELTS. They will look at your SAT or ACT test. It depends on which one you are taking. And then if you have any work experience and so forth, that will be helpful.
And for the graduate school, again, they look for your grade point average in a bachelor's degree. That's very important. So right now, if anybody is undergraduate degree, getting their bachelor's degree, what we've noticed is that, you know, in Saudi Arabia, for example, medical degree is at the bachelor degree, and a lot of students think that this is their terminal degree and they will no longer have to show their grade point average to anybody. But once they apply for residencies and any postdoctorate education in the United States, everybody wants to see their grade point average. So make sure you get really great grades. And then usually into graduate school, there are different similar tests, but different entrance tests that one needs to take. And they're called GRE tests, and they're also by subspecialties, somewhat similar to SAT tests. TOEFL is required by some schools, and a minimal requirement is 100, I think, taken by the computer skill test. What is it? Computer-based. And so you have to look into the requirements of each school. They might be different. The requirements for the GRE, the specialty GRE or GMAT if it's a business school, I guess, and then what their grade point average requirements, etc.
I must say something about the business schools. Actually, they are different. For the MBA, for example, Master of Business Administration, if you go to a good school, they require at least 2 years of full-time work experience after your bachelor's degree. And this is, you know, related to accreditation and so forth, and ranking also. If you apply for specialized degrees in business, they may waive the work experience depending on the subject matter. If you are applying for finance, for example, you may not need to have work experience. It's desirable but not required. If you are applying for project management, for example, it is required. So it depends really on the topic that you are applying for.
There are a couple of more variables that you need to keep in mind. If you have an advanced degree from your country, such as an MBBS or any other degree, there is a possibility for waiver of GRE if you want to go into doctoral programs in basic sciences. Many universities actually do that if you request a waiver for GRE, provided your other requirements for entrance have been met. The second important variable is that there are certain programs which require, irrespective of whether you have met or all the other requirements, that you be a US citizen or at least a resident alien. And for example, in MD program or in pharmacy program in United States, it's a requirement that you be a US citizen or at least a resident of United States.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. First of all, I would thank you, and we appreciate your time and efforts and all the tips you gave us. I wanted to ask, you mentioned in the applications that there's something called common applications, and I think in UK there's something called UCAS. In US, is there like a recommended website or a name for the common applications?
Yeah, there is a website actually. When you go to any university, actually, they will tell you whether you are applying for a common application or not.
Okay. So there's like.
But I don't know the website by heart.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. If I want to, just because I listened to Dr. Sohail in another presentation, and if I can ask you just to elaborate more in that part that you present during your presentation, the tips for the Saudi resident who goes there and he wants to apply and join a program in the US. So more tips from your side to get adapted as quick as possible and then get more likely to get accepted?
So for a Saudi student, or for that matter, forget about Saudi, it is for international medical students, the more and more you look like an American graduate, the more likelihood that you will get into American residency program. That does not mean that you have to change the color of your skin or develop green eyes. What it actually implies is that you create an environment around you, for example, USMLE, doing research, developing a relationship with a group of physicians or mentors who are going to provide the letters of references, doing clinical attachments. My advice to you would be that if you're interested, and it is a long and arduous course, but if you're interested in going to the United States, start working on that particular process very early in your medical school, not after your graduation, which implies that as soon as possible, and when you are ready, you do a clinical rotation in the United States in an area of interest. Your first clinical rotation should normally be not focused on a subspecialty, but they should be more in general subjects such as internal medicine, pediatrics, and general surgery and alike. Do at least 2 or 3 years of rotations during the summer. Try to find some rotations for yourself during your 7th or internship year. And try to do those rotations in area of your specializations so that you start to develop relationships with the faculty who potentially could be your references in the future. If you've had the opportunity, start doing research. That is one of the differentiators that is going to propel your candidacy many steps ahead of other applicants. Many of you would actually end up going to Kaplan. It is a required, but a required curse for you. And I will be very frank, because it takes you away from clinical setting for an extended period of time. And you have that extended period of time creates a question in the minds of program directors as to how well you will fit when you come into residency training. Bear in mind, on July 1st, when you start your residency, some of you may be on call. And therefore you have to do physicals and diagnosis of the patient. And many of you have not been in a clinical environment for a sizable period of time. Some of you, after finishing your Kaplan, have gone into clinical research or basic research and may be away from clinical setting for a 2 to 3 year period. 2 to 3 years is a long period to be away from clinical setting. So try to shorten that particular period as much as possible and try to, during that period, do as much clinical rotations as possible.
Thank you very much. There's one question from...
First of all, thank you very much. We appreciate your speech. My question about letter of recommendation. You talked about the importance of letter recommendations and acceptance in Johns Hopkins in higher education. However, there's many requirements, such as USMLE's Step 1, Step 2, and clinical research. But is there like a percentage for letter recommendation to be accepted in certain programs?
So I'm going to tell you what generally, it's a great question, what you're competing against. You're competing against American graduates for the same positions in residency. And so what happens is everybody has a dean's letter. A dean's letter is a compilation of all your rotation comments that dean's office put together for all graduates. You're against a mentor's recommendation letter. As I said, mentor's recommendation letter is 2 pages long usually for a student that's applying, that they did research during medical school. And then the rotations where they did some clerkships, medical students ask for letters of recommendation from their preceptors at those rotations. So you need to replicate that as much as possible when you're applying. And what Dr. Rao said, you need to look as American candidate would look like. Whether your school provides a dean's letter or not, they could write that they don't provide a dean's letter, let's say, that's fine. But your chairman still needs to provide a letter, and then you need to still get letters from clerkships that you did in United States, and perhaps a mentor through your research. So those are the letters of recommendations you need. What I've noticed, it's harder to get in just with, not impossible, but harder to get in just with Saudi letters of recommendation. What would you say?
I concur with you. I think in 2012, through the courtesy of SACM and Dr. Summer, we provided a template letter for Dean's letter, which was distributed to the Council of Deans in Saudi Arabia. This was a letter just to give them an idea, and 3 institutions, including ours, provided those template letters to her. Unfortunately, to date, none of the deans of any medical school in Saudi Arabia have adopted any of the recommendations that were made to the Council of Deans to actually take this part very, very seriously. So I think it is important. The second thing which Dr. Bird said is equally important. It is much better to have a letter of recommendation from your colleague in the United States that you know, from a program that you know, from an institution that you know, rather than a letter from someone who is from Saudi Arabia. So doing rotations in different departments and different institutions and getting letters of recommendation from them is going to go a long way.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, it's not all deans. Yeah. In Taiba University, we adopted that, so it's just a little comment. We adopted that, and we started using the same format, and we started now for the last maybe 4 months now, using it, and started writing these detailed, a lot of information written, and it is exhausting, but as long as they are needed, so we had to do that.
I was just waiting for your comment, Khalid.
And to tell you the truth, in many universities, it's not actually dean writing, it's dean's office providing that letter, putting comments down. So dean is just signing that letter and making sure that they agree with everything. But usually there is a person dedicated for that and in student affairs that actually pulls together all the comments.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's expected that dean has no time to write this, so don't expect your dean to know you personally. It's just dean's letters provided to everybody, and usually one person is designated to write that letter. So make sure that person really likes you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is exactly what we did. We assigned a person to write it in details, and then the dean just goes quickly through it, make sure that what is written is according to the right format, and then. So if there's, yeah, upstairs there, go ahead.
Hello. My name is Samira, and I'm a graduate from the University of Dammam, Saudi Arabia. And I had a question actually regarding researches. It was my understanding that performing a research in the United States would actually help us impress the program directors there. But now you're saying it's against us, so what would you recommend?
Are you a graduate of a medical school?
Pardon?
Graduate of a medical school?
Yes, I graduated from medical school.
I don't think this is actually going to go against you. If you have done research, that's actually going to differentiate and help you. What I suggested is that don't wait for you to come to the United States to do your research.
Oh, no, I still haven't entered a research program. I'm currently applying for some.
Yes, and it will help you to get into a residency program. Let me put it this way, it's going to make your candidacy more competitive. Whether you get into a residency program or not, that's a separate issue, but you will certainly improve your chances of getting into a residency.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I also would like to add, some students that come to US, they're torn whether they have to enter a master's degree or a postgraduate research program for a year. First advice, do not enter both at the same time. You're not going to do a good job in either one. You're not going to impress your mentor, and you're not going to do well in classes that you need to take over 1 year. Number 2, I would recommend strongly masters to those that either don't have a good GPA in their medical school or didn't get into